Howdy everyone. Today I'm going to be teaching you the necessary steps in order to dual boot Windows 10 and any Linux distribution. The first step you're going to want to do is go to the search bar, so hit Windows and start typing partition. And as long as you come up with create and format hard disk partitions, you're all good. So click on that. And this window is going to come up for you. And this is going to bring up all your drives and all the partitions on the disks associated with them, which is basically like, organizing folders in a sense. But it's not quite that, but that's a crude analogy, and we'll go with that. So in my case, I have two hard disks, and Windows is installed on the smaller one. And what you're going to want to do is, so if you only have one disk, you're going to want to right click on the C drive and click shrink volume. And in my case, I'm going to use the secondary larger disk and click shrink volume. And the next thing you're going to want to do is do a little bit of unit conversion. So if you want to give your secondary machine 30 gigabytes, which is something prudent, then you would type in 30,000 megabytes here into this search field it gave to you. For me personally, I'm going to give it 200 gigabytes, which is going to be 200, 1, 2, 3 zeros, 200,000 megabytes. Click shrink. And now you have a bunch of unallocated space. And if you go to Windows Explorer, you're going to notice, see, I had a terabyte of storage on the secondary disk, and now you see I have less than that now, and Windows can't touch that partition. And so that is the whole goal. When you're doing Windows updates, you do not want to harm the disk that Windows is installed on, because that would be a problem. You want to make this as clean as possible because Windows is expensive and Linux is free. So you're going to want to protect Windows. Even if you have it backed up, it's a lot of trouble anyway, so make sure you partition everything. It's really easy to do and really important. So after that, let's back up here, and let's say that you've gotten tired of trying to dual boot. Let's say you want to get rid of this partition. What you do is if you right click on this, you're not going to be able to find an option to expand the partition. Instead, you're going to have to right click on the other half or anything else and click extend volume. Click next, next, finish. And one really, really important thing to note about that is when you do that, you're going to be basically formatting everything associated with the secondary machine. So if you had Kubuntu installed in that partition and you just followed that step I gave you, you basically formatted everything. But in case you run into problems with whatever distribution you try, Linux is a bit of a pain sometimes. It's not as user-friendly as Windows. It's more customizable, but anyway, that's a debate on its own. But if you want to back up and give everything back to Windows, that's how you do it. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew how to do that because I did not know how to when I first began this. The next thing you're going to want to do is go to a web browser and find the Linux distribution you're interested in. And in my case, it was Kubuntu. You're going to want to go to the legit website, download, and there's two versions. One of them is supported for a longer period of time and is more stable, and the other one is updated more often and is known for being less stable. I wanted the frequent updates, so I clicked on that, but it's really your choice. So it recommends this, perhaps. So if you have 64-bit, take that. 32-bit, take that. But who has a 32-bit computer in 2020? Anyway, so you download the ISO, and so I already have a couple ISOs downloaded. So let me find them for you to show you what they look like. So you're going to want to find the ISO, and you're going to want to know the location of that. And you're going to want to know the location of the ISO. And what you're going to do is I've given you a link to a program that you need to download called Rufus. And once Rufus is running, you need to find the drive. In my case, I already had it to the right place. In my case, it was on the desktop and a special folder. And then click it and then open it and then click start. Now, one really important thing that I kind of wasted my time with by accident was, see, when you click start, it's going to take, I'm going to guess around 10, 15, 20 minutes. So that's a kind of a long time. So when you click start, when it finishes, it's gonna have a little prompt to start again as soon as it's done. So once it's done, do not click start again, because that will basically restart the whole process and undo all of your progress, because each time you burn your USB drive, you are formatting everything on it and putting this on there, and actually you're renaming the entire USB stick. So that's really important. So let's say your name is the ISO file name is Kubuntu 1910. If you plug that into your PC, it's going to show as soon as this is done, or even while it's in progress, as Kubuntu 1910. That's going to be the name of the device, and that's going to help your Linux distribution recognize that. And the next thing you're want to do is you're going to want to, let me get out my notepad here. This is the slightly harder part, and I cannot show it without another recording. But we'll go through the steps first and click Advanced Startup. And once you go to Advanced Startup, you need to find your way to Advanced Options, and then you need to find your UEFI firmware settings. And that's going to basically restart your computer with the BIOS, and basically not go to Windows right away. And what you're going to want to do is change the boot order. The significant thing you're going to be doing here is you're going to be changing the boot order so that you boot off of your USB drive, and you need to make sure that that boots before the Windows device or Windows Boot Manager. And once you've done that, be sure to save your changes and exit. Once you have saved your UEFI/BIOS settings, what you're going to want to do is make sure your computer is completely powered off, and then hit the power back on once again. And once that is done, what you're going to want to do is keep pressing escape, or for whatever, find out what your brand is. So mine's an HP, my computer, and let's say I have a Dell or something like that. I don't know what function you use to get into its BIOS or UEFI. So you need to find that. In my case, it was escape. I kept hitting escape over and over and over, and eventually you'll come up to the BIOS/UEFI. And in my case, the option to select a boot device, I believe, was F9. But make sure you browse down that list it gives you for the function key and the associated task with it, and find the boot device, and make sure your USB drive is your primary boot device. Once you have installed, once you have gotten this running, once you have booted, you're going to run into a setup screen, and it's going to be a very basic version, looking version of Linux, where you can do hardly anything because, I mean, you're running off of the USB drive. And you're going to double click on the desktop icon that's going to install your distro. And once you double click on that, the thing you need to make sure you do is at any point when it gives you an option to give a disk partition that your Linux is going to be using, is make sure that you, very importantly, do not install to the entire disk. If you do this, you compromise your entire Windows system. So all that money, $200 or $100 you spent on Windows 10 at some point will be erased and you'll lose everything. So very important, you need to make sure that you find the partition. So make sure you go through a manual disk setup and find the partition. Now, let's say you put in 200 gigabytes like I did. You're not necessarily going to find a drive that's exactly 200 gigabytes. Or 200,000 megabytes. It might be listed. You're going to have to find something that's approximately that value, so 200 something. For example, if it's 40 gigabytes, 40 or high 30 something, something that's approximately that value. And the way you will definitely know that this is the right drive you need to write to is it'll tell you this amount of the disk has been written to, and this is the amount remaining. You have not written anything to this new partition you made earlier, so it should say 0% written to, and that's how you will know that's the right partition. Please make sure that that's the only disk you're putting it on, and do not put it on the entire C drive or whatever drive you're putting it on, as it will compromise the entire thing. Now, if you have, like me, an entire drive that's separate from your Windows installation, go ahead. But please, if you have one drive, make sure you're very careful with the step and make sure you get it right. Well, folks, that'll be all for today. If you have any questions, drop a comment in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond in a timely manner. Thank you all. Feel free to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye-bye.